There was a moment here in Australia, when the wind seemed to whisper more than simply breeze. Not the wind through a town that was allowed to exist. The wind through a town the government decided should not. Where officials drew a line through the map and said, close the services, remove the name, let the people leave. And where the people looked at that decision and chose, with the particular stubbornness of those who have lived somewhere long enough to love it, to stay anyway. There is something that happens when a community is told it should not exist. Some leave. Some follow the services as they are withdrawn, which is what the plan requires. But some remain. And the ones who remain become something beyond residents. They become proof. We are counting down 5 Australian towns the government tried to delete. Some were erased from official maps. Some had services withdrawn one by one until leaving felt like the only rational choice. One was poisoned and abandoned when accountability became too expensive. And one was literally demolished, buildings removed, streets cleared, the town submerged, and came back anyway, when the water dropped and the chimneys rose and the people returned to the shore to look. Like this video if you have ever felt that something worth keeping was being taken by people who decided it was inconvenient. Subscribe because one day you will want to know which places refuse to go quietly. Let's break it down. Number 5. Wittenoom, Western Australia. Wittenoom was built in the Pilbara to house workers mining chrysotillite, blue asbestos, the most dangerous form, the one that kills most efficiently. The company knew the dust was lethal. The mine remained profitable. The knowledge stayed quiet. The mine closed in 1966. Asbestos tailings had been used to surface the town's roads, fill children's sandpits, line the footpaths. The dust was in everything. Mesothelioma diagnoses followed across the decades. The death toll reached into the hundreds and continues. The government's response was erasure. Wittenoom was removed from official maps in 2007. Road signs came down. Services were withdrawn. The handful of residents who refused to leave were described in official language as staying against advice in a location that no longer officially existed. One long-term resident said, "The government took the town off the map but they could not take it out of my life. I came here as a young man. My friends are buried here. A map is not the same thing as a place." The gorges surrounding Wittenoom, now within Karijini National Park, are among the most extraordinary landscapes in Australia. The problem was never the land. The problem was what was done to the people inside it. Wittenoom is not a place to romanticize. It is a place to understand. Erased because erasure was cheaper than accountability. Picture this. It is a morning in the Pilbara. The gorges glow ochre in the early light. The road signs that used to point to Wittenoom are gone. The map no longer holds its name. And somewhere in that officially nowhere, the remaining structures stand in the heat, indifferent to what was decided in an office in Perth. Number 4. Farina, South Australia. Farina was named from the Latin word for grain. An act of optimism from the 1870s that the land along the Oodnadatta track would prove suitable for wheat farming. The rain the surveyors projected never arrived with the consistency grain requires. The farming failed. The town contracted as its reason for existing withdrew. The government response was methodical. The railway closed. The post office was removed. The school was shut. Each withdrawal made the next more inevitable. By the mid-20th century Farina was officially abandoned. Stone ruins on the Oodnadatta track, slowly returning to outback. What the plan did not account for was the Farina Restoration Group, volunteers who began arriving in winter to work on the ruins in 2010 and have returned every season since. The bakery walls are stabilized. The railway station outline is clear. The streets are documented. A town that was supposed to disappear is instead becoming the most carefully preserved ghost town in South Australia. One volunteer wrote, "Farina was supposed to be gone. The logic of withdrawal said when the services left, the place would follow. What nobody calculated was that people would come back on purpose, with tools, because something about this ruin in the outback deserves to be kept. Picture this. It is a winter morning at Farina. The stone walls are warm ochre against the pale sky. Volunteers work in the outback silence. The Oodnadatta track runs past. The name means grain. No grain ever grew here at the scale the name imagined. But something grows every winter, the opposite of forgetting. Number 3. Leigh Creek, South Australia. Leigh Creek was built as a company town for workers of the coal mine supplying Port Augusta's power stations. When the mine closed in 2016, the company's position was simple: the town was built for the mine. The mine was finished. Therefore the town was finished. The original plan involved demolishing the housing stock and abandoning the infrastructure. The sealed roads, the modern homes, the school, the medical center, built for the workforce, would be removed or left to deteriorate. Leigh Creek would join the list of outback towns that existed for a purpose and disappeared when the purpose ended. The South Australian government intervened, purchased the housing stock at significant discount, and began reselling privately. Houses that were scheduled for demolition sold for between $15,000 and $40,000. People who had found property ownership impossible elsewhere discovered that a modern house at the edge of the Flinders Ranges was available for the price of a second-hand car. One early buyer wrote, "The company built this town and decided the workers were done, so the town was done." What they did not understand is that a town is not just its purpose. We bought our house for $22,000. The Flinders Ranges are outside the window. The company is gone. We are still here. Picture this. It is an afternoon in Leigh Creek. The sealed roads run straight. The Gammon Ranges rise to the north. The houses that were going to be demolished are occupied. The school is open. The company decided this town was finished. The people who bought the houses for $20,000 have a different opinion. Number 2. Oodnadatta, South Australia. Oodnadatta is the town the government tried to delete by removing the railway, and when that proved insufficient, by withdrawing each subsequent reason to stay until the population was small enough to be manageable and remote enough to be ignored. The Gone Railway ran through Oodnadatta from 1891, making it a significant stop on the route north. When the new alignment bypassed Oodnadatta in 1980, the decision was framed as geographic and economic. The severing of the town from the national rail network was called a consequence, not a choice. What followed was the familiar pattern. Services contracted. Population declined. The infrastructure investment that might have maintained a viable community was directed elsewhere. Oodnadatta was not erased from the map. It was simply made progressively harder to justify remaining in. What was not erased was the Pink Roadhouse. Family operated since 1980, now one of the most recognized outback roadhouses in Australia. It is the reason Oodnadatta still exists. One business. One family's refusal to leave. One family member wrote, "The railway left in 1980. The logic said the town would follow. The logic was wrong. It does not account for people who decide this is where they live and that living somewhere is sufficient reason for it to continue to exist." Picture this. It is a morning in Oodnadatta. The Pink Roadhouse is open, as it has been open every morning since 1980. The Oodnadatta track runs in both directions into country the railway used to connect. The town is here because a family stayed. The government removed the railway. The family did not remove themselves. Number 1. Adaminaby, New South Wales. Adaminaby takes the top spot because this government did not merely try to delete a town. It actually demolished one. Old Adaminaby was a functioning Snowy Mountains community removed in the 1950s to make way for Lake Yucumbene, the reservoir at the heart of the Snowy Hydro scheme. The buildings were demolished. The cemetery was relocated. The streets were cleared. The lake filled. Old Adaminaby went underwater. New Adaminaby was built on higher ground as replacement. Residents were moved. Infrastructure was rebuilt. The official position was that the relocation was complete. What was not relocated was the town's relationship with its own past. In drought years, when the lake drops far enough, the ruins emerge, chimneys, stone foundations, the outlines of streets, visible briefly before the rains return and the lake rises and the town submerges again. People who were moved as children, and their descendants, come to the lakeshore when the water is low. They stand at the edge and look, and something between memory and grief and defiance moves through those gathered on the bank. One person whose family was relocated wrote, "They built a new town and said the old one was finished. But when the lake drops and the chimneys come up, everyone goes to look." You cannot relocate a place by moving its buildings. The place is still there. It is just underwater. And in that quiet hush, beneath the whispering gums, above the submerged streets and the erased signs and the demolished houses and the towns that refuse to leave, I realized not all shadows hide. Some simply invite us to see. We just counted down 5 Australian towns the government tried to delete. The attempts were real. And in every case the deletion was incomplete, because places are not only what appears on a map. They are what the people who love them refuse to surrender. What place have you refused to let go of? Leave it below. If this video showed you something worth seeing, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a different kind of map. We will see you in the next one. This video expresses poetic and reflective storytelling. Historical details are based on publicly available sources. It does not offer travel, safety, or relocation advice.